All right, great. Well, great to see everyone. Hello, colleagues. Thanks for carving out a time on a Thursday, which is really kind of a Friday. Um, let's go ahead and get started. It's going to go by pretty fast. And this is all about the flipped classroom, a different kind of spin that I've put on it over the years. That of course I begged, borrowed, and stole from somebody else. But and then also we'll talk about a generative AI kind of. It's really in kind of reading it. The description is on there. It's not really using generative AI to really generate the this concept of a flipped classroom. It is the flipped classroom allows us to integrate generative AI pretty easily into our lessons. So that's kind of the piece of the generative AI that I'll add in at the end, but that I think is been a very useful way for me anyway to easily integrate that into things I'm already doing. So great. So let's jump in. Great again, great to see everyone. Um, and here is a blank Zoom screen that is not part of the presentation. I'm going to flip it over here, and here we go. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples, um, just straight from what I'm doing in Canvas and in my courses. Everybody that you see on here, I have their permission. I've asked them to if I can show this to you. They're all really great students, so they're proud to be a part of the presentation. But let's jump into it. So the flipped classroom 2.0. So I've learned a lot in kind of these last two presentations preparing. Appreciative to Karen and Addie for letting me be the affiliate this semester. And again, I kind of start off with a historical point of view and learn a lot of stuff I hadn't learned before. So, of course, we're all familiar with the traditional classroom. We all grew up with the traditional classroom. We've probably all worked with the flipped classroom at some time, certainly have heard of it, the inverted or flipped classroom. But just as a starting point, where we have the instructors uh, prepare material and then we deliver it, often called sage on the stage. And it can be very effective. You know, it depends on very much on that person who delivers, who that sage is, or who who's at the front of the classroom, or who's in charge of the curriculum. So it's not like it's terrible. We've all had some really engaging instructors, and we're all working on being more engaged ourselves all the time. But of course, we've also had professors where I really knew the back more than I knew the front, and you know, if you really are into it, you can learn from them as well. But is there a better way? And that's what we're always working for. Is there a better way? We've heard of active learning, and again, this flipped classroom concept has been around for quite a while now. Kind of always seems like it just came out, but this was early 2000s or kind of middle to late 2000s where it kind of really gained steam because that's where the kind of online YouTube stuff kind of took hold. But it's really, I learned, it's been around since 1984. So anyhow, the flipped classroom, where the instructor records and shares lectures outside of class, that's typically nowadays online. Students watch and listen to lectures before coming to class. So they're doing a lot of asynchronous work. I'll call it asynchronous, where you have 20, 30, 40 students, how many ever students there are, and they're all doing it at different times. They don't have to be there at the same time together. So that's what I mean by asynchronous. Class time is devoted to an applied learning activities and more higher order thinking. They've already done a lot of the we would have spent class time doing in lecturing and transferring information. They have, in a sense, done that already. They've had that, they've received that information, and now they're going to try to apply it in class. That's the bridge. Well, I'm going to intersect something in between those two. And then students receive support from instructors and peers as needed. That's right there in real time as they are doing the activity. A lot of times this translates. Again, I'm sure a lot of us have seen this in one way or another before. There's a lot of variations, but a lot of the ones I've seen just involves no homework. So they do a lot of the learning on the front end, the new material integration on the front end, and then the applying the homework in the live session. I call it live session because I teach. Um, I did this the first speech. I never even introduced myself. So I'll introduce myself here in just a second. But when I say live session, I just mean class. That's when we're all synchronously there together. So that is a little bit about the flipped classroom. Luckily, I have another kind of couple of slides to really get our minds around what it is I'm talking about when I'm really focusing on the pieces of the flipped classroom that we're going to dissect. But first of all, again, it's great to see everybody. I am Bivin Sadler. I teach in the Masters of Science and Data Science program that's been around since 2014, completely online. We've just moved to the new Department of Statistics and Data Science. So stop on over in Heroy and give us a high five and see us. Um, we are, again, it's been around almost 10 years now. This might be actually our 10-year anniversary that we've been around, but it's been completely online where we do an hour and a half each week, the 15-week semester. We have 3 semesters a year, but it is an hour and a half of async, which really is sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours of videos, doing multiple choice, free response questions, discussion questions. I call them concept check questions, but you're watching a video and answering a question. Very typical to what you'd see on most online deliveries. Um, but then at that point, then traditionally we would have a live session, which would be an hour and a half. It used to be on something called Adobe Connect. We now use Zoom. We've used Zoom since pre-pandemic times. But but regardless, the very vanilla basics of it is an hour and a half of async and an hour and a half of live session each week. Now, how we use that time is what we're talking about today. And over 10 years, I've used it in a lot of different ways. And I love teaching on campus. I used to teach adjunct, or not adjunct, I used to teach half my time was in MSDS, and the other half was teaching on campus, was a lecturer position in our introductory stats course, which could have up to 120 students. So I believe that this, and I'm really interested in a discussion, hopefully we can have one at the end, how this might be able to be translated to an on-campus classroom. And I think very, very, very easily. So in some ways better. So great. So again, really, really thrilled and honored to be here. This is another look at what a flipped classroom could be. Students prepare outside of class, asynchronously watching videos. They practice, do activities in the classroom, work with their friends, synthesize information, and then get some real-time feedback from the professor. And then they can, oftentimes they might do some homework afterwards, right? Sometimes I mentioned the homework is done here and that's it for the student. And then other times they may go home and do some homework at the end. I kind of prefer that method, to be honest. Students check their understanding and extend their learning once they've had that. So maybe they're doing some more async online assessment. All right. So some history. Actually, in my research, which didn't go much beyond a few papers that you'll see here in a second, and of course, I'm going to check ChatGPT and Wikipedia, but all sources seem to agree that Milica Neshkina from Russia in 1984 was the first known person who came up with the concept of this flipped classroom. And this was a quote from her. Let pupils extract new things from autonomous reading of a textbook, which has been created accordingly, allow them to consider it and then discuss it with their teacher at school and come to a united conclusion. So that was the first concept of not stage on the stage, but let the student do some pre-work at home, and then we can come in and again, use that information, use it to critical think, use it to get to higher level thinking. Now we can build on those concepts, and that's very much what I think we all want to do in our classes. But that was especially something that I was kind of seeing. I teach again statistics. I teach data science, but mainly my PhD is in statistics. So you can think t-test, regression, multiple regression, and more statistical type tests, chi-squared tests, so on and so forth. So here's the rest of the history from there. A lot of the history starts in 1993, and some just mention the Bergman and Sam's genesis that really kind of started it into the current modern day. But it does go all the way back to Allison King, who's actually the same name of a student of mine. You'll see a little bit later. I was like, what is it? She wasn't even born by then. So anyhow, it goes back to Allison King all the way up to who gets most credit for modern day flipped classroom innovation is Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams. And they're high school teachers from Colorado who first kind of published on this and really brought it mainstream with their online async videos. Awesome. So now that we've got a little bit of the history, throughout these talks, thanks again for letting me do these talks. I've always wanted to be the faculty affiliate. I love kind of coming and listening to others. I love to have this discussion, and all that to say, I have really gotten into using ChatGPT and DALL-E for all of my presentation illustrations. So kind of just prompt engineering. It takes quite a while actually for me to generate one that is useful. But anyhow, this is a version of what it looks like to do the async. So a student is doing the async at home and hopefully having as good a time as this student looks like she's having with the material. Then they come to class. This is the traditional flipped classroom. Come to class. Now they're all prepared. Hopefully they all have questions. They're off of zero. They at least have some concept of what they understand and what they don't understand. And then they come to class, and here we go. We're going to do some activities and talk to our friends, and they understand pieces that we don't. We understand pieces they don't. We can generate this discussion. Very active learning. I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. This is how I ran my classes for quite a while. The problem is I didn't know what they knew and what they didn't know. And there's beyond looking at the yes no correct answers on the async. So yes, I can look at the async and see who missed, what students missed questions the most, what questions were missed. But beyond that, there was no real way for me to know, or there wasn't a mechanism in place at the time for me to know what the student actually felt. And that's what I want to kind of get at as I was probing through live session, oftentimes even lecturing in live session, trying to read and look at faces and maybe do a couple of polls just to see in real time in live session where we should go, how I should customize this and diversify this instruction. And so it was a good effort, and I think we had great classes. But could it be done better? That was the argument. So at the end of the day, with the traditional style, student would then go home. One version of this is to go home and do more homework, and then we can do an assessment. This is independent, not as group, but now independent. What do you know is what we're trying to get at. And then we move on and repeat and go to the next lesson. So one last time, we've got some asynchronous video learning. Then we come to class, synthesize the information, talk to our friends. The teacher can give us some insight, and then we go do it on our own to get assessed. Okay, so does that work? Has that worked in the past? This is some more historical information. There's really quite a bit of study out there, so this is by no means anywhere near exhaustive. But I thought these were kind of interesting small studies from a couple of papers. So this was the paper I first looked at. Again, I'll give the deck to Addie after this. But this was a class of 84 that they decided to publish this little article on. This is the Likert scale from 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, and to disagree to neutral, number 3, to agree, number 4, and to strongly agree, number 5. So it is a 5-point Likert scale. And it's kind of interesting, right? Pretty small sample, but a flipped classroom is a better way of learning. That was most people were kind of neutral to agree. So all of these are pretty just north of agree as far as the mean, but very interesting. I enjoyed the flipped classroom. It seemed like that was kind of a slightly positive lean towards really kind of enjoying. It wasn't by all means, this is the best thing, we need to switch to this automatically. But I feel more motivated in the flipped classroom. We were between neutral and agree, participated and engaged. Although I became more active learner in the flipped classroom. And a lot of this is in the implementation. And hopefully all of us are thinking right now, I've done this before and I've engaged and my scores would be higher, or my scores when I looked at it were lower, but maybe I can maybe change it. And this will give an idea to all of us when we have a discussion is what can we do better? So that's certainly the pedagogy part of it, but the delivery is a big part of it as well. I experienced pleasure in the flipped classroom, right? A lot of people really enjoyed it. Probably, they can talk with their friends and socialize as well. So that was an interesting kind of reflection, I think slightly positive. This was one that was an international study actually done in Ghana. They didn't use the Likert scale for this particular result, but here was some the just percent agree and disagree. So it just made it pretty simple. There's a lot of information in here. So just looking at this one, blended learning encourages me to look for an extra information about a topic. 58% agreed. I have, well, let's use this one. I am confident. Oh, I am I meant to put, yeah, here he goes. I'm more confident in learning in a blended environment than in the lecture method. This question really contrasted the flipped classroom pedagogy to the lecture method, to the sage on the stage. 72% in that one agreed that they liked it better there. Now there's some other interesting ones in here, but the videos and learning materials are exciting and motivated me to learn. Those, of course, dependent on the materials, but in this particular case, a lot of people agreed. But then down here, participating in online group work encouraged me to understand better. Only 15% agreed with that one, which was kind of the most lopsided one. So there's a little bit to imagine and to try to take away. There's a whole article written around this, but this could easily be this was apparently there was an online group component to this, whereas typically in an online classroom it's all async. You're not doing a group online. So we can look more into this one, but I think that was probably a one-off, just a tweak of what this particular implementation of the flipped classroom was. Overall, looks pretty positive from my subjective point of view. So let's jump into how we might be able to do this better. The flipped classroom approach 2.0. So I can't wait to kind of share this. Here's the big idea. All right. So this is how I'm going to show you some of these videos here in a minute, but we have gone and shot a bunch of videos with different multimodal delivery methods, with light boards to PowerPoint presentations where, I'm actually in it. It's kind of green screen behind me and I'm in it, to actual coding sessions. Again, it's data science. A lot of it's coding in R or in Python. So there's a lot of zooming in, though. There's a lot of things you can do with a video, like you're trying to code and say, now focus in on this particular function. If you have those those niceties in video production, it can really kind of change the game and the engagement and understanding that come from these async videos. But that's what we have. We've got concept check questions. I'll show you those in a second, but that's the idea. The flip part of this, or not the flip part of the flipped classroom, but the 2.0 part of this is I have them do a pretty involved assignment that is in between the async and the live session. And I'm going to show you that assignment here in just a second. But the whole goal of this was to generate as many questions as possible before we actually get to the live session, because that's the gold moment, is when we can all be there together. I'd love that for that hour and a half to be super efficient. So the idea being, hey, work on your own, do this async. Then work on your own and do this PowerPoint. I've got a PowerPoint with a couple of slides that each have a data question on them. Great. They put their answers. You'll see this here in a second, but they put their solutions. So they're practicing making presentations, one thing for communication, but they're practicing their PowerPoint skills or their presentation skills. They're practicing how to put images and generate bar charts and histograms, and to integrate those with text. So there's a lot of components that go in, a lot of advantages even to making this PowerPoint slide that I'm about to show you. But the other thing is that their solutions are on these slides. They're recorded, and I'll go through before class and give them feedback on, and I'm giving myself feedback at the same time on what they know and what they don't know and what I need to study in the class. And I see that for every student. So by the time I go into class, I'm like, oh, you know what? And you'll see it in the example I give. You'll see I had a paired t-test, which is if I take a reading on my arm and then I rub some lotion on it, and then I take another reading on my arm to see what the effect of that lotion was. I'm taking two readings on the same person. Of course, I'm going to have some dependent observations, so I'll use a paired t-test. Contrast that with what we study also in this independent population two sample t-test, where I might put the lotion on a population of people and then randomize the lotion to go on some and not to go on others. Now I've got two independent groups of independent people. I can do a 2-sample t-test. But traditionally, a lot of people when they're first learning it, a lot of students conflate the two and apply the 2-sample t-test where really a paired t-test is necessary. I can see that. I can see if everyone's having a particular problem. Now I know I can customize another example maybe, or I can bring in and really focus because I know that question exists. I don't have to guess it and read it in real time from the students. Um, I know what their thoughts were. I know what, or at least I know what their thoughts were on paper. So I've got that confidence. It really feels great when I know that I'm speaking to something that a lot of people had questions on. The other piece of that is, I usually give them 2 to 4 hours to complete this assignment. It is graded on completeness, not in correctness. So they can get 100% and get everything wrong. The whole idea is that they've tried it and I can give them comments and that I get a feeling. Now they can't just say, I don't know. And I'll see that, luckily I don't have any examples of that, but sometimes I'll see, I couldn't load the data. So, and that's it. So if they couldn't load the data, that's really good to know. What did you try? What was the error message? What workaround did you have? You're going to spend 2 to 4 hours on it. So let me know what the path was so that I can bring the specific question. We can get that one out of the way in live session. And of course, if somebody had that question, somebody else probably had that as well. So it's super critical, I think, for this implementation, the way that, it's critical for me to grade this on completeness rather than correctness, that they're just trying. But it's also very critical that I'm a very adamant and very thorough grader to make sure that they are putting what I call a graduate school effort. I teach at the master's program but I think we should hold the undergrads probably, to that same standard, just effort. So let's just see effort. Let's get used to documenting and showing what errors were and really telling a story, even if that story is about a failure or that story is about an incomplete assignment. How can we tell that story so that it makes sense and you can say exactly in paper and writing what happened to you. So this is the critical new piece. This is the 2.0, is doing an assignment before we get to class. So then we go to class. Not only do what I've found is that the students now are super invested because they've generated questions. I haven't told you the last best part of this is there's the last slide of that FLS is a question slide where they just write down their actual questions that they have. And it can be, it's not me looking at which ones they got wrong. I've already done that. It's them saying, hey, could you do another log transformation example? Hey, I really didn't understand, did I do that right between the paired t-test and the 2-sample t-test? Or just something, from last week. They're like, yeah, I didn't really get this when we talked about this last week. Can you go over the different types of t-tests? I get that question a lot. We have this flow chart. Can you go over that again? Okay. Still hear me? My earphones just bugged out. Can you still hear?
It's good now.
It's good. Okay, sweet. Awesome. So great. So that's the idea. And then we do homework. And then at the end, after we've gone through the assignment, let me go back here real quick and I'm jumping around. So in here, we're going over the assignment we just did. I have breakouts. I'm on Zoom, so I'll have breakouts. You can do that very easy. Obviously, you're looking at the on-campus version of the breakout. So it takes a little more moving around of chairs, but we've done it for years. And students are very invested now. They're not scared to ask that question because they're pretty confident and they're now want to know that answer because they've spent a couple of hours trying to get around it. Or they're really eager to share what their solution was. So students are invested at this point. They're equipped with knowledge enough that they're not so worried about understanding. They've had time for that to kind of sink in. Hopefully they've had a night's rest before then. And not only that, but the teacher knows. The teacher can look around and say, 60% of the class actually had the same question. So I can spend some time really focusing on that part. Or if you remember it's really great when you're like, oh, hey, I remember your FLS. I remember that question that you had. Now that student knows that this is really personal and they'll be there to work in my experience, they'll work kind of even harder because they know that somebody cares, that somebody's really there looking at their work. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But then, of course, at the end, they're like, okay, now I'm equipped. I've looked at it. I understood that I don't understand it. I found the questions. I got those questions answered. Let's go on to the critical thinking, higher level questions. Now I'm ready to actually try some stuff on my own. That is the Flipped Classroom 2.0. So I thought what we would do here is look at some examples from my Stat 1 Spring 2023 class. Again, I've talked to the students that you'll see in here, but I did want to show you, we're all recommend on Canvas. We're all familiar with what Canvas looks like. This is our LMS that, of course, we're using in our program as well. So in here, we'll come back to the assignments tab, but just to kind of remember a little bit of statistics, we'll do step 1. That's just very defining what a p-value is, defining what different types of experiments versus observational studies. Then we actually go into the tests. This one was using t-distributions. This one happens to be when the assumptions are met. And then this one is when the assumptions are not met. So let's pretend we're in Unit 3. So you're a student in Unit 3. We'd look at paired t-tests. This is the async. I think we're all really familiar with this. You know, we may, on campus, you may have something like this or not. On when we deliver online, every first hour and a half the student sees of every unit are these type of videos. So if I go into, let's say, t-test here, and so you might recognize this famous professor. This is Dr. Monty McGee, who actually started the MSDS program back in 2014 with Dan Eagles, but she's still teaching him the program. That's it'll be one of the advantages at the end. But there is a lot of work to put in videos at the beginning. If you're teaching on campus, you're like, it's a lot of work to put in videos. It's really great because they can live forever. They can end up teaching future generations. And also it's just, it's kind of nice to have, but it can really create value in the future. It's kind of a nice timestamp. But anyhow, Dr. McGee is still in there. This would be what that would look like. Let me go back. See if I can find a question. Sorry, I didn't have that dialed up, but it shouldn't be too hard. Here's my paired t-test. This one right here. So that's me doing the paired t-test. So you'd watch those.
I thought a method that will help us with
those videos.
Here's the data of the difference where you have after minus before.
This actually was shot
to be 0. Let's assume there's no effect.
This was actually shot during the pandemic in my guest room. So if you're wondering, do I need professional? It's great to have Jennifer Jordan. I always say she's the best video producer I've ever worked with. She's in the bottom of Perkins, in the basement of Perkins Administration Building. But you can do this on your own as well. So again, in your video producing skills get better, and these will last forever. Let me go back, and so the students will watch the videos, and then come and let's look at one more here. Let's check. Let's check this one. So in this one, we also did some log transformations, and here's an example of where you would have a question. So you'd watch this video and then watch this video. A lot of times, so we've got light boards. So here's some light board stuff. I'll show you a little example of that. We have a light board on campus. If you're interested.
About how to interpret.
See if I can get some writing on there.
Test equals the log.
So there's another kind of side benefit of putting your videos in there. Let me know if you're curious after class. We actually have, this is much smaller light board, but I've done a lot of work on it over the years. So if you're interested in working with a light board, we have one. I mean SMU, that's available to anybody that's interested in using it. So so you watch these videos, and then at the end you can answer in this case a multiple choice question. Cool. And then I can come down here and read the responses, but I'm going to be able to do so much more with the FLS. But that is the initial introduction of new material to students. They can watch it over again, right? They can do it at their own time. It's very convenient for of course, it takes some diligence and some discipline. But for those that have it, it offers I'm kind of speaking to the choir, but just to underline the fact that if in a lecture, I can't really rewind it and stop everything and go back if I miss something. Of course, in these, that's a huge benefit of kind of having these pre-recorded videos. So that's the async. That's the first kind of phase. So then students would finish all of this. So, right. And, my classes are a little probably more dense than they should be. This is probably about an hour and 45 minutes of material. But then they will come here and do the FLS. And the FLS, so the 4 live session assignment, everyone will end with the 4 live session assignment here. And I drive them out to my GitHub. So I actually store all these 4 live session assignments on my GitHub, but I believe I have it right here. So this is 6371 FLS 3. So this is, they've done the async and they're like, okay, I feel ready to give a good college try. I'm ready to kind of get my hands dirty here, knowing, I always tell them, just assume you have 100 errors. I used to work for Motorola, and this was one of the software things we assumed that software had errors in it. And then as we detected them, we got closer to where we could release the beta product. That's how I look at education right now, and it evolves. But I assume at the beginning of the material, the assumption is we don't know any of it. So I think we've got 100 question marks in our head. And then as we go through the async, we eliminate some of those question marks. Maybe we generate some new question marks. But then as we have to, we don't know what those question marks are. We don't know what those errors are. So we have to work on it. And that's what this is all about. Let's try the t-test. Let's run into where we thought we had it, but we don't. And every time we find an error, it's beautiful. It's gold, because that's one less error that we have in the system. So I've found that if we look at it that way, if I can convince students to look at it that way, when they find an error, it's something to celebrate. When they find something they don't understand, I assumed that was there. Now I can get that out of the way so I can pursue my understanding. That's an amazing thing to find that error and then fix it. And now it's not there anymore. So in here, I'll give them some multiple choice questions. Again, these are kind of review from the concept check questions. We don't have to go into what those are, but they're getting at SLOs that, of course, we've developed when we designed the course. So in this case, I've got 4 of them. We can, I can see as a class how they're doing, but the real meat and potatoes of this are these. So I'll give them a little time. I'll say, hey, spend less than 2 hours on this. And if you don't have it done in a particular amount of time, just document what you did for those 2 hours. And that should be a lot of documentation. This one was a Ritalin experiment, and actually did this experiment when a long time ago when I really needed some money and was doing some medical tests. So they put all these electro receivers around your eyes, and then gave you Ritalin, and then the next week they didn't, but it was double blind. So they gave you a pill, and they asked, they said, hey, you probably don't know which one is Ritalin, which one isn't. And then they'd put these earphones on, and it'd go, shh, and all of a sudden it'd go pop. And when it popped, your ears would blink. So they could measure the time between the impulse of putting some loud noise in your ear and your eyes twitching. So they'd measure that reaction time on Ritalin and without Ritalin. I could really I'm almost certain I knew which one was Ritalin, but this is what that is the placebo and Ritalin, and it's measuring your reaction time. But each measure is on the same person. So since subject 1 is independent of subject 2, that's great. Those subjects are independent of one another, but the reading of placebo and Ritalin are not independent. Those are dependent observations. Can't use a 2-sample t-test. That's what we're getting at here. So that was one of the SLOs from this Ritalin experiment. The other kind of SLO from this was applying a log transformation. So it's kind of a completely different idea when the assumptions are not met in terms of skewness of a normal distribution. Again, we don't have to go into the statistics of it, but we assume a normal distribution. If we don't have that, sometimes a log transformation can make things more normal with equal standard deviations. That's what this SLO was about. So they do question 1, they do question 2, right? They're going to spend about 2 hours on each one. And I'll show you some of the responses, and then they tell me their takeaways. In this class, I have them give 4 takeaways.
at least 4 takeaways. Some students go off on this. I tell them it's like your receipt from the course. You're going to look back at this at the midterm and the final. You might look back at this next year when you're actually using this in industry to remember how you learned the material. So this is another big piece. Some students, cut and paste from the videos. They're pasting screenshots, but I need 4 takeaways. Sometimes I even find that their takeaways are not right or that need tweaking. That's another opportunity for me to learn where the disconnect is and to iron it out before live session. So I'm reviewing these before live session. This last one are the questions. Please provide any questions. These will help us optimize live session for maximize learning and takeaways. Man, those are gold. If I can just know, I just get in the student's brain and in a relaxed environment. And sometimes they'll let you have it. Sometimes they didn't like the videos. They're like, I was totally confused in that video. Well, great. Maybe I can go fix the video, or I can just explain what the video in another way was trying to say. The thing that blows me away is that the way I used to teach this class, I had no idea what that was when I came into live session. I didn't ask them for the questions. I could glean what I could from the async, but going from the async into the live session, it was the same every semester because I was just going in blind to the live session. Here, I'm so much more equipped with the specific information for that cohort to diversify instruction as I'm in this magic time where we're all together in this hour and a half. So then that's it. So let's look now at, let's see here. Yeah. So let's go ahead and look at what that might look like from a student point of view. So I'm going to come in here and go to live session question 3. We're all familiar with this, and then head on over to the speed grader. Should see, yes, Erica. I'm going to come back to Erica. And first I'm going to go to Jake. So here, this was Jake's amazing student. But what I really want to show you, we've got this. If you've used the speed grader, highly recommend it. But if you have, this is very familiar. If you haven't, you can add comments right on top of it. But I can see, okay, Jake, D, good, got it. And I'm going through every single student before live session. It takes about 2 hours for about a class of 20 for me. It depends on how in depth you go, but around 2 hours to go through these before class. You could have TAs go through a lot of this, and you just look at the questions. There's so many variations. But I think just putting something here lets the student know that you're paying attention, so that they're going to do what's good for them and actually do these assignments, and they're going to be more engaged with me, likely because of it. So I like to, even if they get it right or wrong or whatever, I like to put, or even if they get it right, I like to put something for everything. I don't always do it, but it looks like I did in this case. So there was a great, he got all those right. So, they're putting a lot of work into the designing of these PowerPoint slides to tell their story, and that they can look back at these later. These are theirs. So this was the reaction time experiment. Looks like he did this well. I'll give you an example of one where we needed some tweaking, but this was that he appropriately did the paired t-test. So great job, Jake. Education, these look skewed. Those look like skewed distributions. He ended up, there's some normal QQ plots look very skewed. He did a normal, a log-log transformation, and they look more normal with equal standard deviations. Looks like this is an example that I gave them that was going to work out, but it's a very nice example to show that they're more normal with equal standard deviations. That gives us more power in our tests, all things that they can talk about in here. Let's see what I had here. This is the ratio of the medians. So when you take the log-log transformation, it becomes a multiplicative change that you're measuring, and looks like he's representing in his null and alternative an arithmetic change, just a difference rather than a ratio. So those are super important things that are going to come across to the client that I know now, and he knows that I know, because they'll look at this before live session. We've already started the learning process. We're already running by the time we hit live session. So great. Yep, good. Here's some of his write-up. I think I get what you're saying, but it looks like, well, anyway, he made a simple, just mathematical error in his calculation. I think he probably did positive 0.468 instead of negative. but all good things, right? That can make a really big difference because one is a multiplicative decrease, a percent decrease, and this one would be 125% increase. And that's another discussion topic that I can bring in and say, very simple mistake that can have huge implications. And it's not some canned toy example I use every semester. It's an example that I know is very fresh because it just happened. So there's his takeaways. Again, I can kind of read through theirs. Usually I'm disappointed I didn't add a comment on there, but we can always get better. So here was his question. I think I'll present it the way you will like tonight. So he knows that I've read the question. Sometimes I'll give, and you'll see here when I go through a couple more, but sometimes it's a question that I'll actually be able to answer, and I can answer it and put comments in here. His was, I'm not sure if what I did for the median income on slide 18 was correct. I think it makes sense because the data is showing that the median income for 12Y is much less. This was that one we're talking about where it's a multiplicative decrease instead of an arithmetic decrease. So, I've got live session to explain that. So I could put it here. I can just say, hey, we'll address this in live session, just saying, I hear you. This one here, right? I always try to put something here. Nice work, Jake. Please see the comments. You can put a lot more in there. And again, this is all done right before, maybe an hour or two. I'll finish up before live session. Students can go in and see the responses, my comments right before. So let me show you two more before I kind of move on. This is, I have it written down on my sheet, but two things I want us to really see. I'll kind of go through this part. You can see my comments here. So there's good, good. So this one was B instead of C. So I've kind of noted it in my head in case I see more C's or more missed questions on this one. Now I kind of have an idea. Looks like she did a nice job on the paired t-test. Looks good. And then right here, right in the conclusion, I have some weirdly dead pixels on my screen, so I'm going to do this. So I said, this is subtly different. We will cover this in live session. This is a two population conclusion, difference of means rather than the mean of the difference. So that's a really important subtlety. But when I have two different groups, I'm looking at the mean of one versus the mean of the other one. But that's not what happens in a paired t-test. In the paired t-test, you subtract all of those. I've got two readings on me and I got two readings on everyone. You subtract those to see the difference, and then you look at the mean differences. So in this one, it's a very common mistake. I know I kind of expect these over teaching this over a number of years, but I can see it. I can see that it's actually happening here and have confidence to address that. She did a difference of means. The mean reaction time while the subjects were on Ritalin is less than the mean reaction time when they were not. That's a two sample conclusion. When I think she actually ran. So right there, she did great. Nice job, Mai. That's the mean difference. She did the null and alternative correctly. We're looking at not mu placebo minus mu Ritalin. We're looking at the mean difference, but she still wrote it up as the difference of means. Great. I know that's happened. She knows that I know it's happened. She knows that she did it. And we're going to reinforce that again and again in live session. So it looks like she did a great job on the log transformation. I'll make a couple of corrections in there. And then on her questions, she had two questions. And so again, we don't need to get into the questions, just the fact that I'm able to comment on them right there. She can get a quick answer. I've noted them again for our live session. I'll show one more. Let's go to high T. So again, we don't, we'll kind of come through here. I'm just going to go to that Ritalin question. So right here, boom. So in this case, zoom that out. This is a test of two population means. We need a paired t-test. Again, this student did the same thing. And that is another great advantage of seeing all of this before live session that we wouldn't have seen in the normal flipped classroom in most implementations. Is here, step one, mu placebo equals mu Ritalin, which is in the alternative mu placebo minus mu Ritalin. I've got a mu for placebo and a different mu for Ritalin. That's telling me he's doing a two sample t-test. Now I've seen two students do that. And in this deck, we don't have to go through them all. There's a lot of students, probably the majority of students that are doing this. Maybe that's a cue to me. I need to do more in the async, right? But whatever, that's 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 something that we can improve on. That's something I can improve on. But certainly we've got a whole hour and a half to iron this out in live session. So we can see common errors, and we can even give them a chance to ask specific questions. So we'll cover this in live session. I'm still a little confused about the robustness of the t-test. Awesome. That's what we're talking about. That's another big piece of this. And now I know they have that specific question. So I'll know to address that specifically in class. And so again, you can give a little piece here. Good effort, high T, lots to discuss in live session. Please ask lots of questions. You did a lot of good work and great presentation. Please see the comments. So finally, the last one I'll show you here is this one. Erica's a fantastic student. You kind of get it all. You kind of, sometimes students just don't have time, right? Sometimes students just don't, life happens. These things take 4 hours. They watch the async. They didn't give themselves enough time, and they don't have it. I put on here, I recall you did a great job on FLS1 and FLS2. I can't underline how important it is. This is only week 3 to complete each FLS, because that's what the whole live session is based on, is your work in the FLS. So I'll come back to this in a second. But in this one, in this implementation, now I can also see students that aren't prepared. And I'll know when they come to class they're not prepared. In the traditional the traditional flipped classroom, I might not know that. In fact, in the implementations I've seen, I wouldn't know that. But I've been through it here. I know that this student had a problem this week. Maybe I see if a couple of students had problems this week. Maybe I can group them together, change what I would do, change my strategy based on this new information. But number one, she knows I'm paying attention. And she knows that if they're not completing the assignment, if I wasn't paying attention, just gave her 100, I'm probably likely to get something very similar next week. But if I'm on it and saying, hey, I'm recognizing this, you do a great job, I expect you to do a great job, most of the time the student comes back the next week or even shoots an email and says, I'm really sorry about this week, which is what's really good for them. I'm speaking to the choir, but this is this is kind of the reality and the practical side of things that I think can move the needle in that sense. So running out of time here, as I sometimes do, but last thing I wanted to show you was a different implementation for a different class. We will run a partnership with AT&T, and that's what you'll see here is a boot camp. So it's still delivered on Canvas. Not sure what happened. I've got all these Windows film strips. Let me get back to so the next example here is the DSSP, the Data Science Scholars Program from spring, actually this is summer of 2023. We run this program over the summer. It's a little spring, a little summer, mostly summer. So that's what you're going to see next. Before we finish it out is this concept. Actually, that one is it right there. That's this one. Last piece on the last one, I also have a solution deck. So this is what I go over a lot of times in class, is I go over my solution. So I don't say it's not the solution, it's a solution. And so they've got this, I put it on Canvas. So now they've done theirs, they've seen their friends, we'll go to breakout, they'll see each other's, and then I'll go through and go through mine. Forgot to tell about that part. In the actual live session, I go through and go through each solution fully, but I have put different emphasis. In fact, I'll show you. This is the Ritalin problem. So this is a solution, and you can see different slide designs. You can see, again, the most important part here, I think, is how you interpret it. Making sure you did the right test, but also making sure you're looking at the mean difference instead of the difference of means, as you can read in here. And they have a receipt of it. They get this deck. And then we're going to have them do homework at the end of this. So they've had repetition now where they've not understood it. They've seen other people don't understand it. They've gotten reflection, comments from me. Then they see an actual solution, and then they get to try it on their own. And then we repeat in the next unit. Cool. And so actually then I guess that's where the last piece I'm going to is a lot of times, and it looks like I've done it here, even though that's not my example, I'll have them do all of this and say, now that you've done it by hand, now see how ChatGPT can help. And so they'll try to do that Ritalin example. They'll pass in the data. And sometimes they've got a different version. Actually, I see Dr. McGee in the room here. We're working on equity studies. Sometimes they have 3.5 and they can't pass the data in very easily. Sometimes they have 4 and they have more bells and whistles. So, so all that to say, one thing here is after they've done all this work, it's a perfect opportunity to say, hey, try it with ChatGPT. Now, I'm going to show you some feedback here, but now they have something to compare it to. Now they know if ChatGPT is right or not, or wrong or not, or got something that they did correctly or not. And if it helped them or if it was just confusing to them. So that's where we'll kind of leave it here. This is now the DSSP. So you'll see here, very similar, I designed this course. So I designed it with the same idea. Their FLS from class 1 was on data wrangling and cleaning. And that is the 4 live session. It's with NYC Flights 2013. It's got thousands of rows of data. It's every flight out of New York City in 2013 from 3 different airports, JFK, LaGuardia, and the other one. So regardless, we don't have to go through the actual analysis, but I did want to show this idea. So in this one here, they've watched some videos on data wrangling in Python. They have gotten the FLS that you see here, the FLS questions. So this is the overall assignment. I got Howdy in there. The goal is to identify questions. That's what we're trying to do here. Not get correct answers. We'd love to, but the goal is to complete this thoroughly so that we can identify the questions. We can identify where the question marks are. Errors are expected and not penalized. P.S. This FLS, just completing it for me, is worth 30% of the grade. So it's, you can get a lot of points just for being thorough. And typically I find that if students do that, if they're very thorough, they do better on the exams, of course. So it's correlated with better outcomes in the whole course. But here's the FLS. So again, we're going to clean it. We're going to merge these. There's 3 different data sets we're going to merge. We're going to do some feature creation from those. And then we're going to answer these practical questions given what we've done, so we can see what the fruits of our labor are. And so you'll see this. They do this by hand. And then at the very end, I say, now use ChatGPT, compare the results from ChatGPT to what you've done manually. How did it perform? Did it save time? Make her slide or 2 to help us figure it out. And it was very compelling. I started putting all this, like, your questions are super valuable, and then I'd put something really valuable and say it's more valuable than that. But it really is. I've got Mona Lisa on one of them, and this one's some gold bars. But it's the same idea. Your questions are what drive progress for yourself, your classmates, and for all of us. They're gold, bring them to live sessions. So let me know what those are. So in our last couple of minutes here, we can check out some student responses. We can check out Danny. So Danny did a nice job. You can kind of just see, let me zoom this out. What happened here, there's the assignment. So, right, he's showing us the 3 data sets that he ingested. Then he cleaned them. He ended up merging them and changing the data types. See what I put in there? Yeah, good thinking. Add the percent instead of just telling us how many are missing, add the percent. There's a lot of stuff on missing values. He ended up merging the data sets. If there's an error, he's got the code in here. I can check it out. There's the feature creation part. Should have put some more comments in here. But this one was great work. He described it well. Very, very interesting result here with some correlation heat maps. So you can kind of see the path. He was trying to tell the story. Need a bit more explanation. So now he knows, maybe I'm really kind of paying attention to this part here. Now I know what to bring into live session. But after all of that, so he's done all of this cleaning. Now he's comes to the ChatGPT part. I say include the prompt so we kind of know where we're going. But he comes up with this analysis at the end. Says ChatGPT dropped all the null values. That's interesting because that's making a huge assumption. That's another example where maybe we need a human in the loop to decide if they're missing at random or missing completely at random or not missing at random. If you're familiar with those reasons for missingness, it's very, very important. Except they all took extra steps as well. Converted error time to numeric. It did all of these things on its own. A lot of them were really good. At the end of the day, he thinks ChatGPT is a great tool didn't tell him the answer, helped get him started, generate ideas and skeleton code that he can work off of. It helped save a lot of time because the codes generally need to write out or written for me, and all I need to do is alter them, not just take them at face value. And he knows how to alter them because he spent the time doing it in the past. So it's very much a collaborator instead of something to really lean on. And then, of course, he's got some questions in here. We don't have to read through those, but yeah, is there a way to keep others from changing? We use Databricks and Azure. So there's other people in this environment, and he wants to know, looks like data is changing underneath him. So how can we prevent that from happening? And I can answer that and bring it into live session. So I think we got 12:57 here. Was there one more I wanted to show? I think we'll just show this one. So this was Joey Hernandez, another MSDS student, but also now works at AT&T. So got a job from this program, but you can see it again. This is another example of, right, he did a really nice job on the missing values. These are percent missing values. You can see very easily the columns. Great job. So you can, kind of see along the way what his analyses are. I would turn these labels, right? I'm really big on labels, and this is a good place to reinforce that. Very useful plot, another heat map there. So great job. It's no surprise he's a fantastic student. Maybe plot the mean instead of, you can plot the mean on there. We can always do a little bit better. At the end of the day, he used ChatGPT. I always thought his comment here at the end was good. It's worth noting that this was just one way of phrasing the question, and ChatGPT can very likely assist on a conversational style basis much more effectively. Debugging code, writing more effectively, and not wasting time on hammer and nail type tasks is invaluable. And that was his takeaway from this one use in Unit 1 of ChatGPT. So that was just he's got some questions here, and I have some responses too. So at the end of the day, let's flip it over here so I can see it. I'll pass this deck out, but where did it go? At the end of the day, PowerPoint. Okay. So here are some takeaways. These are some challenges. I've got 1 minute here, but we'll wrap it up. Heavy workload for the student, that is a challenge. Heavy workload for teachers, that could be it, right? You can get efficient with that. But you get a lot for what you put in. Considerable time in making videos, but they last forever. Some advantages that we've kind of covered here are relevant and customized instruction, identify common questions before class, right? That's number one for me. Less questions lingering after live session. That's what I was noticing in the first couple of years, is that I'd identified a lot of questions in live session, but when are we going to actually answer those as they go onto the homework? Not that you can't do it, but it's more efficient, I think, this way, or it can be. Students are more able to employ critical thinking skills because they're coming in with questions that I've already answered so that they can ask the next question, and they can put 2 or 3 ideas together. Instead of just learning how the paired t-test works, start asking about when it's appropriate and how to write that conclusion, and what's slightly right and what's really right, and what's the best way of kind of doing things, good practices. That's exactly, this piece here is exactly what I just said. So active learning, that's a kind of a buzzword these days, but that's exactly what all of this flipped classroom stuff is doing. Recorded instruction, that lasts forever. That's a good, it takes a lot of time, but it lasts forever. So it's a pretty good ratio. Better assessment, it's low stakes, but all they have to do is put the effort in. And I'm there to really judge how much effort they put in and then learn from that effort. Ability to identify struggling students, as we did earlier, and especially students that do a really good job and then just miss one. They'll know that you're paying attention, and if for some, maybe they'll prioritize their time a little better next time if they're able to. So thanks for the extra minute there. Woo! Wish we had time for discussion, but I really appreciate everybody's time.